It is dark. A fire crackles somewhere behind you. Your ancestor sits close to it, close enough that one side of the face feels the heat while the other side stays cold. And then something happens that has never happened before. A sound comes out of a human mouth. Not a grunt, not a scream, not a warning call like the ones every animal on the plane already knows how to make. Something else. A sound with a shape, a sound meant to stand for a thing. The people around the fire go quiet. One of them understands. That was the first word. You will never know what it was. No recording survived. No stone remembers it. The single most important sound in the history of your species vanished into the night air the instant it was made, and it was gone forever. Except that isn't quite true, because there is a very good chance you heard a version of that first word this morning, and by the end of this, you will know exactly what it was. For almost the entire time your species has existed, there was no such thing as a word. Think about that. Homo sapiens is around 300,000 years old. For most of that stretch, your ancestors saw the same sunrises you see, felt the same hunger, held their children the same way, but they could not name any of it. No word for fire, no word for mother, no word for run. Today you speak one of roughly 7,000 living languages, without effort, without thinking. A 3-year-old does it. But the machinery behind that ordinary miracle took an almost unimaginable amount of time to switch on. And scientists have spent over a century arguing about exactly when. But here is the strange part. They may have just found the answer in the last place anyone thought to look. Not in a mouth, not in a skull, in your genes. In 2025, a team led by Shigeru Miyagawa, a linguist at MIT, published a study with a clever idea. They reasoned that every human population on Earth has language, and every language is related, sharing the same deep structure. So the ability to speak must have already existed before humans first split apart and scattered across the world. So when did that first split happen? They pooled 15 separate genetic studies to find out. The answer: the earliest branch of humanity, the ancestors of the Khoisan peoples of southern Africa, separated from everyone else around 135,000 years ago, which means the capacity for language had to already be there. By 135,000 years ago, at the very latest, your ancestors could talk. That pushed the date back dramatically. Some famous linguists, including Noam Chomsky, had argued language appeared much later, maybe only 50,000 years ago. The genetic evidence made that look, in the researchers' own words, highly unlikely. But knowing when they could speak doesn't tell you what came out of their mouths. For that, you have to look at the body itself. Speaking is a physical act. To make a word, you need a very specific piece of equipment. A small, U-shaped bone in your throat called the hyoid. It floats above your voice box and anchors the muscles of your tongue. No hyoid, no speech. In 1983, in a cave called Kabara on the slopes of Mount Carmel in Israel, archaeologists uncovered the skeleton of a Neanderthal man who died around 60,000 years ago. And tucked in the throat was a hyoid bone, almost identical to yours. That was a shock. It suggested Neanderthals, a different kind of human entirely, were built to speak too. Then it got stranger. When scientists recovered Neanderthal DNA, they found something called FOXP2, the one gene most tightly linked to speech and language. Neanderthals carried the same version you do. Now, scientists still argue about how much this proves. A similar bone doesn't guarantee a voice that was used the same way. But the picture keeps pointing in one direction. The ability to speak is old, older than your species alone, maybe reaching all the way back to an ancestor you shared with the Neanderthals. So the equipment was ready. The brain was ready. Somewhere, someone opened their mouth and said the first true word. And here is the question that should keep you up at night. Could you ever find out what it was? For a long time, the answer was a flat no. Words don't fossilize. Most words don't even survive very long. Linguists estimate that a typical word gets swapped out for a new one every 2,000 to 4,000 years. Sound drifts, meaning slides. A word is like a footprint in wet sand. The tide of time erases it. But a few footprints refuse to wash away. In 2013, Mark Pagel, an evolutionary biologist at the University of Reading, went looking for them. He and his team ran language through the same kind of math biologists use to track genes, and they found a small set of ultra-conserved words so useful, so constantly spoken, that they had barely changed in around 15,000 years, all the way back to the end of the last ice age. There were 23 of them, words like I, we, who, mother, fire, hand, not, and strangely, to spit, worm, bark, and ashes. Look at that list again. It is a snapshot of what mattered most to your ancestors. Yourself, the people around you, the fire, your hands, and the things you feared. Not every linguist accepts Pagel's method, and it is still debated. But the idea underneath it is powerful. Some words are so essential to being human that they outlast empires. And that finally brings you back to the fire, back to the promise, back to the first word, and the one you almost certainly heard this morning. Here is the thing almost nobody realizes. The closest you can ever get to the first human word isn't hidden in a cave, it's in a crib. Think about the very first word a baby says. Almost everywhere on Earth, in languages that have never touched each other, it is some version of the same tiny sound. Mama, mama in Mandarin. Ama, ima, mor, mère. The word for the person who feeds you starts, over and over, with the same soft M. For a long time, people assumed this proved those words came from one original ancient word, passed down unbroken since the dawn of speech. But the linguist Roman Jakobson figured out the truth, and it is far stranger. Babies don't inherit mama, they reinvent it, every single one, everywhere, because and ah are simply the two easiest sounds a human mouth can make. The ah needs nothing. No tongue, no lips, just an open mouth. And the is the soft nasal hum a baby already makes while nursing. Lips pressed closed, mouth full. Put them together and you get the first sound almost every baby stumbles into. Ma. The baby isn't naming anyone. It's just babbling. But the mother hears mama, and her heart decides it means her. She says it back. And a word is born. Not passed down, but created fresh, right there, between a hungry baby and the person holding it. So picture it. Not a council of wise elders inventing speech on purpose, but something far smaller and far more human. A woman sits by a low fire, an infant against her chest. The baby is restless, mouth working, and out comes that soft hum against her skin. Then a break, then the hum again. Ma, ma. She has heard it 100 times, but this time she looks down, and she answers. She presses the sound back toward the tiny face, again and again, until the baby's eyes lock onto hers, and the sound and the person become one thing. No stone tool marks that moment. No bone records it. And yet, if you want to know how the very first words entered the world, that quiet exchange by the fire is almost certainly closer to the truth than any grand theory. It has happened billions of times since. It happened somewhere in the world today, which means your children didn't only learn the word mama from you. In a way, they taught it to you. The same way a baby taught it to your ancestors 135,000 years ago, so you will never recover the very first word ever spoken. But you don't have to, because the first word is spoken again, brand new, every single day, by every baby, in every language, reaching for the first person it loves. That is the version you probably heard this morning. You carry this around without noticing. Every time you say mom, or hey, or hum in agreement, you are using sounds your throat chose for the exact same reason a baby by a fire chose them. Because they're easy, and because someone was listening. Language didn't begin with a genius. It began with a mouth that couldn't do much yet, and an ear that cared enough to give the sound a meaning. So go back to that fire 135,000 years ago. The dark, the heat on one side of the face. A sound comes out of a human mouth that has never existed before, and the people around it go quiet, because one of them understands. You thought that sound was lost forever, but it wasn't. It's the one a baby made this morning, somewhere in the world, reaching up toward the first face it ever loved. The first word never really ended. It's just waiting for the next mouth to say it.